Hey guys, it's Misty from the Book Rat, and it is day 4, I think, of Graphic Novel Week, and we are immediately being joined by a cat. Hi, Jojo. You can't see him. There we go. There's the other one back there. Jojo Otto. On Monday I had a viewer's choice, and I kind of decided that I liked all of the topics and sort of want to take them all on. Plus I think the votes kind of ended up about equal. So yesterday I talked about good graphic novels and comics for kids. Today I'm going to be talking about what I look for in a graphic novel, and I know a lot of you wanted to see a video on sort of targeted recommendations, read this if you like this, and I do still want to do that, but I don't want to just throw it together and have it be kind of slapdash, so I'm not going to do it right now for this graphic novel week. I'm just going to kind of take some time and mull it over and research it a bit and plan it a bit and hopefully get back to you on that one. So that will happen, but just not this week, so sorry about that, but I'm gonna do it. I promise. Fingers crossed means you're lying, right? I shouldn't be doing that. I'm gonna do it. Anyway, as I said, today I'm gonna be talking about what I personally look for in a graphic novel, what draws me in. A lot of you have asked me that because you're maybe wanting to get into graphic novels and aren't sure how to go about it, so these are kind of the things that I look for. I'm sorry I'm looking a little washed out. There's a bit of a lighting issue in the fact that I didn't want to lug my big camera and tripod down here while I'm house sitting, so I'm using my phone, but my phone doesn't pull in light as well and has to be propped on things, and all the proppable places in the house don't give me the best light. So today I've wedged my phone up against the door handle and am sitting right in front of big bay windows, so I'm getting a lot of light. Maybe too much light, but it's better than too little, I think. So you probably didn't need to know all that. Let's get into what I like about graphic novels. I've narrowed it down to kind of 4 key things. So the first one, and a kind of obvious one that I think draws people into stories in general, is the characters. A lot of people have talked about this before. You'd think it'd be plot. People like certain themes, or they like certain plots. They like crime stories, mysteries, whatever. And that's true, you will be drawn to a story by that, but what keeps you there and what really commits you to the story is the character. So for me, whether it's prose or a graphic novel, it's characters that either really charm me or are relatable or are very funny or just are intriguing. So they don't have to be the good guys, but they have to be good characters. They have to be someone that I want to invest the time in. Hi, Jojo. He's rubbing all up against me, so if there are any weird cuts in this, it's probably because I stopped to play with the cat. I'm just gonna warn you right now. Anyway, I'm perfectly fine with reading a story about a villain. I like a good anti-hero story, but he's gotta be, or she's gotta be, intriguing. It's gotta be someone that really makes me want to keep turning pages, whether those pages are full of words or full of art. There are plenty of people that have a really good handle on this, but characters that have really drawn me in are things like the really cutesy and sort of charmingly odd characters of Ben Hatke. So there is a rock, like a rock monster, I guess, in Zeta the Space Girl that I fell in love with, and then thought that it probably couldn't get any weirder than that, but then later there was like just not even like a full-sized giant rock monster, but a literal rock, a black ball with eyes that I felt for. So if you can make me connect to your characters like that, that is damn good. I think characters is one of the strengths of the Castle Waiting series by Linda Medley too, which is one of my favorite series just of all times. I could read it over and over. It's so good. And it's retellings of fairy tales with kind of like side characters more of a focus. I mean, that's a plot that you can approach from a million different directions. Everyone's done fairy tales. So it relies on the characters to draw you in. You already know the stories. You might be intrigued to see what the twist on the stories is going to be, but it's the characters that are really going to keep you there. But even on a kind of more simple and non-fantastical level, the characters of K.O. Mori, who wrote Emma and Shirley in A Bride's Story, these are all historical and realistic, so they're not fantastical, they're not crazy. These characters are just so solid and so lovable and feel so real, and I think that's something that she's really good at, and that's something that will absolutely draw me in. But obviously plot plays a big part in it too, so that's the number 2 thing. I'm less drawn to the sort of crash bang pow superhero-y comics. I did read those when I was a kid, but as I've gotten older, I tend to find them a little cheesier, maybe a little heavy-handed, and I don't know, something about him just feels a little more bogged down to me. So, I mean, I'm okay with a superhero, but the sort of traditional thing you think of with superhero comics doesn't appeal to me as much as a plot that is more whimsical and more fantastical. I tend to lean very heavily towards those. I like a really good dose of quirky in everything in life, so I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. I'm fine with weird and experimental as long as it doesn't seem like it's weird or experimental just for weird's sake. There needs to be a purpose to it. But quirky and cutesy, that definitely draws me in. And fantastical things that a graphic novel is well suited to, or a comic is well suited to, so you can physically show these really interesting quirks and fantasy elements, which of course you can get in books, and I love fantasy books, but there are opportunities in graphic novels to kind of push it even further. You don't have to describe it, you don't have to take the reader there with you and hope that they're going to understand what you're trying to say, because they can actually see it there in front of them. So I think that can be a real strength of comics and graphic novels. But characters and plot, I mean, those are two things that every story is really gonna focus on. Those are the two things that are make it or break it for everything that you read that's not nonfiction, and even sometimes nonfiction. I mean, it's gotta have compelling characters even if they're real. It's gotta have an interesting plot even if it really happened. So those are kind of givens, but the key to a graphic novel and the real focal point for a graphic novel and the thing that sets it apart obviously is going to be the art. And art is key. It really is the make it or break it element. I tend to be drawn to more clean and open art styles. I don't like things that are really busy and fussy. I think that's one of the things that kind of pushes me away a bit from the superhero comics. They can feel really cluttered to me, and it just makes my mind feel chaotic. Again, I think Ben Hatke is really good at this, having things that don't feel cluttered and detailed enough without overdoing it. I just talked about Roller Girl by Victoria Jameson, which the art for that was very clean and open and simple, and I really enjoyed that. You can have very detailed art that still doesn't feel cluttered. Kei Oramori is another one again, who her art is not simple. I don't think anyone would look at these just insanely detailed and perfect Victorian cities that she draws and all of these details that she manages to fit into a panel, and it's got to take her ages, but it never overwhelms your brain. It never feels like it's too much. You can pore over those panels and they're lovely, but it's still very clean. It's still really well done. So it's not necessarily about the amount of details, the amount of lines that are in a little square. It's how they're used and the kind of feel that they give. I'm also really drawn to color palettes. Now, it doesn't have to be a specific color palette, but it has to be one that works really well. When someone's got a really good handle on color, it just is my happy place. You know, obviously, I like color. I don't think that that's a surprise to anyone. If you've seen my bookshelves, you know that they're organized by color. So color is something that's always been important to me, and complementary colors, strong color palettes, it doesn't matter. It can be in any blues, greens, pinks, purples, oranges, yellows. It really honestly doesn't matter what the color is, so long as it's used really well. There are some artists who will use a sort of distinctive color palette for them. So like Sarah Varone, you might have noticed when I was showing Sweater Weather in Tuesday's video, that large parts of the book, it was all just one tone, blue, and then some other parts would work in pink, but that was all you see in the entire book, is just shades of blue and pink. And that's kind of her distinctive style, and it really works. Anya's Ghost by Vera Brosgol is another one where everything is done in a sort of smoky blue-based gray, and so that whole cool blue gray tone feels like a storytelling tool. It feels like a very intentional choice that adds to the way the story feels, because it's ghostly and it's kind of cold, and the color palette suits the story. For a more expanded color palette, so moving beyond having just those couple of colors, but full spectrum of colors, I think a book like The Undertaking of Lily Chen by Danica Novgorodov is so incredibly beautiful, such a good use of color. It's watercolor, so I'm biased because I tend to love that, and that's what I use, but I think it's something, even if you aren't into the story, which is a really dark story, it's something that you would pick up and everyone would think, that is really beautiful. Even when a story doesn't appeal to me, the plot, the characters, whatever, I might still pick up a graphic novel if the art is really knockout, because that is, I mean, that's what a graphic novel really is all about. It is art. Kind of case in point, I've been meaning to go back and read this and give it another try, but Kabuki by David Mack, I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of the story. Now this could be because I think I accidentally picked up the second book and hadn't read the first. Even though I wasn't necessarily in love with the story itself, the art is probably some of the best art I've seen in a graphic novel. Oh, it was so gorgeous. And that's something that I've been meaning to go back and read that series, even though I didn't connect with the story as much, just because I want to see more of that art. So art is really the overriding factor in what helps me choose a graphic novel. If it has good art, if it draws me in, I mean, you can pick up a graphic novel and flip through it, or a comic and flip through it, and know instantly if you connect to the art style. That is probably the number one deciding factor of what I look for in graphic novels. The last thing, and this is kind of the hardest to pin down, is just interestingness. I don't really know. I mean, what's interesting to one isn't necessarily interesting to another, and how do you even begin to describe that? But there are just some things that, even though they might make a fine prose novel, benefit from having the graphic novel medium. So if you've ever read American Born Chinese or The Eternal Smile by Jean Luen Yang, both of those are, they are told in 3 parts with 3 different styles, and you can do that in writing, but there's something about the visual aspect and seeing those different styles and then seeing how they come together or how they play off of each other. Having those be graphic novels instead of prose added a level to it, I think. Or same with the Olympian series by George O'Connor. I talked about this the other day in my review on Tuesday. There are really simple things that George O'Connor does that are visually so effective, and you could not do them in writing as simply and have them be as effective. There are just some things that you can do to add visual interest, and visual interest adds another layer to the story that, though you might still enjoy it and you might get other things that you can't get necessarily in a comic if it were a prose novel, there are strengths that a comic and that art can bring to a story, and that just adds that extra level. And I mean, there's no telling when a book has it or doesn't. You just gotta read it or flip through it and see, but there's always just that little je ne sais quoi, that little bit of interestingness that you can't quite put your finger on, but that will draw you in. Those are kind of the things that are make it or break it for me. Characters and plot, those are obvious ones, but art and interestingness, I think those are kind of dependent on the comic, and those are what really will make you connect. I'm listing some I think are good embodiments of what I've been talking about in the info, so definitely check out the description box if you are looking for good examples of what I've been talking about. Let me know in the comments what draws you into a graphic novel, or what you're looking for when you pick up comics and sort of visual stories in general. And if you've yet to read any comics or graphic novels, we were so close to the end. And if you have yet to read any comics or graphic novels and you're not sure exactly what will draw you in, don't just give one a try, and if you don't like it, you know, call it a day and say they're not the medium for you. Go to your library or your bookstore, flip through, get recommendations from people, look them up online. I guarantee you will find a style that suits you. There's so much out there. But that is all for today. If you've missed any of Graphic Novel Week or want to see my thoughts on everything graphic novel and comic related, the full playlist is here, also linked below. I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys in the comments, but until next time, I will see you guys again soon. Thanks for watching, and happy reading! There has been a wasp just creeping closer to me this entire video.
What you doing, buddy? Thinking wasp thoughts? Doing wasp things? You want to tell them about your favorite graphic novel?
I bet it's Last of the Sandwalkers.